Fantastic. Well, just going on 7:01. Looks like we've got everyone in. Before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. There is a question and answer section in the bottom of Zoom where you can list any questions you like. We will answer every question. There's also the opportunity to ask the questions or chat, and you can chat to the group or you can chat privately to panelists. If you've got a particularly sensitive question or something about your particular history that you'd like to send directly to us, we can definitely respond in a generic way, or we can speak to you offline. To quickly introduce, just to kick things off, Colin Brewer, who's the Managing Director of Builder Registration, is joining us today. I'm Nathan Hawkins. I'm also from Builder Registration. I'm going to act as your host. And a special thanks to Peter Griffiths for organising this from Box Hill TAFE, who's also joining us, who's sitting as an attendee. So a big thank you to Peter for organising today, mate. I know you've put a lot of time and effort and are really passionate about getting the right information to your students. Thank you. But Colin, did you want to quickly introduce yourself, mate?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nathan. So we started Builder Registration just short of 10 years ago. And actually, we celebrate our 10-year anniversary on the 1st of July. And it was born out of the fact that people go through and they do their certificate 4 or they do their diploma, which is great. But we filled the gap in being able to help people put the application together and prepare them for the VBA assessment process. Becoming a builder is not an easy thing, and it's not an easy climate and so on to operate in at the moment. But we've been fortunate in terms of we focus on providing people with the facts. Not everybody can become a registered builder. Of our inquiries that we receive and so on a weekly basis, about 85% of people, we give them the pathway, but we can't accept them as being clients. Be very wary of people who are just ready to take your money, because becoming a builder requires you to have a specific skill set. And we're here tonight just to try and debug and so on a lot of the misconceptions, give you the facts and so on about becoming a registered builder. It's not so much a sales thing, but an information session and so on, to be able to give you guys and so on the facts as that's what is required. At Builder Reg, we're fortunate in terms of over our 10 years, we've got nearly 2,000 guys successfully registered. We have a staff of about 20 and so on that on hand, and they're all dedicated to one thing and so on, that's just helping people to become registered.
Fantastic. Now we're going to talk about a couple of dot points. We're going to talk about the VBA process. We're going to talk about types of licensing. To kick things off, we are going to talk about the VBA process, with Colin's going to walk through what the VBA process is from application through to interview. Just while we're doing this, if I could get a bit of a favour from all the attendees, could I get you all just to list in the chat your age? It'll be really good for us to sort of tailor this for you guys so we get a bit of an idea of the audience that we've got. So just while Colin's going through the VBA process, if I could get everyone just to list their age, that'll be really beneficial and just mean we can sort of tailor this for you guys a little bit more. But Colin, talk to us about the VBA process.
Sure, Nathan, there's a real pathway to becoming a registered builder. Most guys and some would set up doing their certificate 3, so they get their trade qualification. It may well be in plumbing, it may well be in bricklaying, it may well be in one of the other trades. And to become a registered builder, you must be able to demonstrate at least 3 years full-time experience in the industry. And they're becoming far more pedantic in being able to prove that 3 years, because you also have to provide a minimum of 3 projects that you've done, and hopefully they're end-to-end projects. So if you want to become a DBU, which everybody wants because that's the ultimate class to become registered, you must be able to provide 3 full house builds and your involvement in each one of those. In addition to that, you must at least have one of those jobs that you worked under with a registered builder. So we call it the 3-3-1. It's 3 years experience, 3 jobs that you can provide as much detail as possible, and 1 reference and so on pertaining to one of those jobs from a registered builder. Now, in terms of the process, the application is really in some far more complex than what a lot of people think. The average application that we would prepare or submitted to the VBA is between 200 and 300 pages. It becomes quite a hefty document, and there's quite a lot of detail in that. So once you prepare the application, and if it's prepared and so on in the right way, you submit that to the VBA. That then goes to a desk audit where a clerical person just makes sure that the application contains all the things in it that it should. If it doesn't, it'll get bumped back and you'll be asked and so on to complete the application and then resubmit it. If the application is submitted, you then go on to the next phase, which is the assessment process. Now, if you have done the Cert 4, you will be asked and so on to do the multiple choice test. I'll come back to that in a minute. If you've done the Cert 4 and the diploma, you'll bypass the multiple choice test and plan reading and you'll go straight to the interview. So what's involved in if you just have your Cert 4 and going into the multiple choice and plan test? What you'll be faced with, and at the moment they're still doing it online, they're doing it through a US program, software program called ProctorU, and you'll be required and so on over 2 one-hour bursts. The first part will be to answer up to 60 multiple choice questions, and it's a simple way of just doing it on the software. You'll be given options and you can just do it from there. The second part of that test is a little bit more complex, and it's something that we have continual discussions with the VBA about, which is a plan reading exercise, which is you've really got to practice this, guys, because it's not about the knowledge that you have, it's about how you can control the mouse. And that's where we have things dispute with the VBA. The bottom line is that after you complete the multiple choice and the plan reading, you must achieve at least 70% or greater score to then be able to progress to the interview. Now, the interview is probably the most stressful part and so on that most people think of, because it is one-on-one with a VBA assessor. At the moment, we're still doing it online. Previously, we would do it on face-to-face at the VBA offices down in Docklands. And what used to be anything between a 2 and a 4.5 hour interview, or as I say, an interrogation, now comes back to being about a 1.5 to 2.5 hour process. What the VBA assessors will be looking at is that they'll be looking at the work history that you've provided in your application, which are those 3 jobs that you put in, and they are going to ask you everything about those jobs. They are going to test your knowledge. They're going to make sure that you have a total and thorough understanding and you can speak to those jobs with authority. In addition to that, they're going to be asking you general questions. And it's questions that you may not have had a lot of exposure to, which is regarding the contracts, it's regarding the preliminaries. It might be, if you're a carpenter and you're working for a volume builder, you may never have been on site when a site scrape was done or a site set out was done or a slab was poured. So that's not a bad thing. We're able and so on to help you with that, but you must be able to demonstrate a thorough and total understanding of building. Hopefully at the end of the interview process, the assessor will turn the tape recording off, because it is recorded, and give you a thumbs up or tell you that you're right to go. Unfortunately, a lot of people that go into the assessment who are not prepared for it don't know what to expect, and the vast majority of people tend to fail when they go through. So it's really important that you reach out to people such as Builder Reg, others and so on, who are authorities, perhaps people and so on within the TAFE, to be able to give you the right guidance and so on, and the right understanding of what you need to prepare for. It's not easy, as I keep saying to people and so on. Building, particularly at this stage, is not an easy occupation. However, it is one that still provides a lot of opportunity. If you do it well, you can have a very successful living, a very successful life. It doesn't take too much for things to go wrong. And as with any area of life, there's always somebody around the corner willing to screw you. So I don't want to put a negative on it, but other than to say and so on that that you really should seek out some guidance and so on the right advice and how to become a builder. Sorry, Nathan, that was a bit long-winded, mate.
That's good, mate. That's good. It actually gave me time. We had a few issues with our chat with certain things not working. I think I've got it working now. Should be working. Just sent that out now. Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, apologies about that, guys, and thank you all for sending the different ages and questions. We've actually got a bit of an older group today, which is fantastic, because we can talk. We're talking to a bunch of 33, 32, 28-year-olds. We can really talk like DBU, because you're right in that hitting point of going for your builder's license. When we're talking to someone more on the 18, 19, 20-year-old side, well, then they're a little bit further away. So the conversation, we sort of hold it a little bit differently, but we've got a bit of an older group, so that's fantastic. Now, Colin, and I just encourage everyone, if you've got a specific question about the VBA process, I'm going to get Colin now to walk through the different licenses from carpentry to DBU to commercial as well. starting off on domestic. But just while we're doing this, guys, can you please just keep hammering us with questions, and then we can queue them up and make this as interactive as possible. When we do a Zoom, when we're sort of looking at you, it's a lot more interactive, but the webinars tend to be a little bit robotic because there's so many attendees, and just, you know, Zoom doesn't cope with that many cameras. But if you can keep firing questions, even if you've got specific questions about your job history, your, you know, what type of job do you need to equate to different licenses, anything like that. Yeah, please just fire away while Colin's doing his presentation. Colin, talk to us about the different type of licensing, specifically domestic.
Sure. In the domestic category, you have 29 different licenses. Okay, DBU is the top of the tree, and that allows you to basically do any kind of domestic build. And I always say to people and so on that let's have a discussion, because everybody is different, everybody's pathway is different, and let's look at the license that best accommodates and best legitimizes your business. So if you're a carpenter and you're only involved in framing at the moment, and perhaps you're a younger guy and you're working for a volume builder, there is a category of license that is available to you for framing. In fact, there's about 4 which pertain inside of carpentry alone. If you happen to run a company and so on that is involved with kitchens, laundry and bathroom replacements, get that license, because you'll be able, that's within reach if you have experience in that side. So look to get the license that best suits your situation at the moment. I noticed that we've got a couple of younger guys there. To be honest, you will not get your license as a DBU if you're 20 or 21 years of age. The assessors say that you must have at least 3 years full-time experience. That does not include your apprenticeship. They will look at it, and it's, I'm sorry, we're here to tell you what you need to know, not what you necessarily want to hear. And that's all we'll be straight. You are far better if you're a younger person looking for a DBL license and using that as a stepping stone. Because if you get your DBL in carpentry, if you get it in framing, if you get it and so on in another license and so on that you're mainly involved in now, you're 60% of the way there to getting your DBU when you get that full build experience. And the VBA assessors also respect that very, very much. So the idea is to look at the license, discuss, have a look at your work history, see which license and so on is best suited for you at that particular time.
Fantastic. One thing that I often get surprised, people are often surprised by, is how powerful a DBLC license is. That's a domestic building limited to carpentry. It's a really, really significant license, and there's a lot of work that you can do. We tend to have put blinkers on, and we really look at the DBU as the absolute goal. But a 21-year-old picking up their DBLC, give us an idea, Colin, of the sort of work that a DBLC 21-year-old.
You are unlimited in terms of the contracts that you can pick up. Your business is then legitimised so that you can go out and you can take up private work. If you get carpentry, there's a category of licence called non-habitable buildings. Now that involves decks and pergolas and even garages and that type of thing, where there's a whole industry out there. If you are a younger person who's involved in that work, look at getting that license if that's your primary business. Legitimise your company, and you can take contracts up to millions of dollars if you need to. You know, the scope is unlimited in a DBL, exactly the same as what it is with a DBU. You're only limited by the home warranty insurance and so on that you can get, but it really is a fantastic pathway to either, if you're going to stick with that line of business, to legitimise your business, or if you want to move up and then ultimately become a DBU, as I say, it's just a terrific stepping stone.
Okay. And talk to us about commercial. What's the difference? What different type of commercial licenses are there?
The commercial, the same kind of principles apply. You've got to have at least 3 years and so on involved in the industry. You've got to be able to produce 3 jobs, one of which and so on has got to be supported with a reference from a commercial builder. Again, there's a vast number of licenses or classes of license within commercial. The most common that we find is the commercial limited to low rise. Now, what that allows the builder to do is to build structures up to 15 metres high with 1 basement and so on, subterranean. And that's able to provide for the likes of high-span factories with a 2-storey office bolted on the front. You can do conversions from domestic into medical centres, or you can look at childcare, or you can look at offices up to 3 stories. And we find that that category actually really applies for about 90% of our builders who are applying for commercial. The next categories, or next two categories in the total build, are the medium rise, and that goes up to 25 metres or 5 stories. But with that, you start to get increase in the likes of the fire service requirements. You start to get increase and so on in the air conditioning and the likes from there, and holding tanks. And the average job is normally well above the capacity for one builder to take on. If you're looking at a 5-story development, you are looking at probably about a $10 to $12 million development, which would take quite an established builder to be able to fund. The final thing, and this is always a bit of a sticking point because it's the commercial builder unlimited, and people think of a DBU, so they automatically want to go for a CBU. With a commercial builder unlimited, that's really kind of nosebleed territory. And I mean that because you can build a Eureka Tower with a CBU. And that really, and so on, that requires enormous amount of experience. What the VBA is looking for, again, is your work history involved as to whether it be low rise, medium rise, or high rise. But in addition to that, you have things such as structural fit outs, which can be the likes of shop fitting and so on, or you can have non-structural fit outs, which is again is a form of shop fitting. You can have steelworks. Again, there's a plethora of different classes of license available. So the best thing is to sit down and so with somebody who can give you the right accurate advice. They shouldn't charge you any money whatsoever for doing that, just be able to provide the guidance and so on for you to set you on the right pathway.
Definitely. One thing, Colin does a really good job of explaining the entire process, and it does sound really daunting. There's a lot to it. For my 30-year-old guys out there that I'm talking to here, there's about 5 of them in the chat, and they've listed their ages. One really simple way is that odds are 30 years old, you've been in the industry for 3 years. So you're going to tick that box, which is fantastic. What I'd be talking to my 33-year-olds and 30-year-olds about is, okay, think of the 3 projects, your 3 hero projects that you're going to bring to the table that's going to show off your skill set. Now, this is a really primitive way of looking at it, but if you bring 3 projects, the license that you will receive will match those projects. For example, if you bring 3 rendering projects, well, then you get a DBL in rendering. If you bring 3 renovations, you get a renovations. Or if they're 3 new builds, well, then odds are you're going to get a DBU. Or even if it's 3 commercial fit outs, well, then it's a fit out license. So the 3 jobs that you bring, you really want them to show off your skill set, and that's what license you should be able to receive. The license will reflect those 3 jobs based on the fact that you can not only provide the 3 years experience, those 3 jobs are involving a registered builder or builders, doesn't have to be the same one, and one of those jobs has to have a reference. So just one. That's a really confusing point because everyone thinks that every job needs a reference or you need 3 references. No, you need 3 projects and 1 reference that's connected to one of the licenses. But we really try to make that really clear. Victor's asked a fantastic question. This is probably the most confusion. We call it muddying the waters, where it's really confusing. Colin, am I correct? This is Victor. Am I correct in saying there's 2 pathways to getting your DBU? One is to get your Cert 4 first and then be eligible to pursue a DBU, or 2 being get your diploma before getting eligible for your DBU. Can you talk about the differences between Cert 4 and the diploma and how it affects the DBU process? So this is probably the most important part that will hopefully clarify it all for you guys. Colin, over to you, mate. You've only explained this about 500 times in the last
week. Whichever pathway you take, ultimately you've got to demonstrate to the VBA that you have the knowledge that's required to be a builder and that you have the experience. Let me just go back a tad and so on and saying that if you're the 32, 33-year-old, don't be shy. We just don't want you to put in 3 jobs. We want you to put in a lot of jobs to demonstrate your experience, okay? It's not a time to be shy. In terms of the academic qualifications, the traditional pathway to becoming a builder was to do your trade certificate, so you get a trade qualification, Cert 3, which shows you're good on the tools. You would then do the Cert 4, which explains to you and so on that about the knowledge that you require behind building. So it explains about contracts. It explains in carpentry about the 1684 Australian standards. It explains and so on the reason that we build the way we do, which is to a minimum level required by the Australian standards. That's the certificate 4. That will enable you and so on to go to the stage where you're doing the multiple choice test and then the plan reading. If you go on and do the diploma on top of your Cert 4, that's mainly to do with the commercial medium rise, but it is the prerequisite for the VBA, which skips you past that first assessment and takes you straight to the interview. I've got to say that irrespective of what you do, the most important thing, the fundamental thing is that you are able to speak with authority about the work history and about building in total, okay? It's no good and so on having the academic knowledge if you can't demonstrate it in the work that you've done. It's no good having the work that you've done if you can't understand and demonstrate a knowledge of the likes of contracts. So they really kind of go hand in glove.
Fantastic, Cole. To put a little bit of a summary is that if a taxi driver or a hairdresser do a Cert 4 and a double diploma and an advanced diploma, they are never getting registered. Like it's never going to happen because they have zero work history. If they're a part-timer, they're doing a little bit on the side, they're not going to get registered. They are looking for construction professionals that are passionate and want to do good in this industry and genuinely care about it. That's what you want to be showing. You want to turn up to your interview and put your best foot forward and really show a solid work history, because that is the most important aspect.
Yeah, and then look, can I say, and so on, that as with anything, there's different degrees of quality in what you do. And if you're doing your Cert 4, if you're doing and so on your diploma through a recognised TAFE, if you're doing it through Box Hill and so on, that's a huge tick. You can go out and buy Cert 4s. You can go out and buy diplomas. We've seen instances, and we talk with the VBA all the time, and one of the common jokes is that they see guys who got their Cert 3 in February, they got their Cert 4 in March, they got their diploma and so on in April, and they've submitted their application and it's all bogus. And the VBA assessors and so on will see right the way through that. So if you are to do your Cert 4, if you are to do and so on the diploma, it's like anything and so on, you'll get out of it what you put in. And I would highly endorse and so on a TAFE course over an RTO course. Okay.
And what happens with those courses, because you have to send certified documents in with you can't just tick the box and say I've got a Cert 4, got a diploma. They want to see a certified copy. Part of that certified copy is not to say have you ticked the box, but who did you tick the box with? So if I had a client that was 33 years old, looking at just getting a cheap, easy diploma, I'd actually just take them on as a client without the diploma, because it actually causes that much harm to them. It puts a spotlight on them because they know they've gone through an easy RTO and just paid for it. So I would rather take them as a more genuine client. I think that gives you a stronger history. But having a Box Hill on there, that brand, it has a lot of integrity to it. And we're not obviously just saying that because we're doing this on behalf of Box Hill. You know, we've done this with other institutes as well. But I can definitely tell you that Box Hill is held in high regard with the VBA. And keep in mind that these guys that you're doing the interview with, they're not these doom gloom big lawyers or anything. They are old chippy builders. Their bodies are broken down. They work for the VBA now. They're not terrible people. Keep in mind in their jobs, they're seeing these phony guys come through every single day. Their failure rates are astronomical. So they're trying to identify whether you're the real deal really quickly. And, you know, it's not an easy gig. I've got another question here for you, Cole. Can you briefly list the specific to carpentry related licenses and the differences? Sorry, that's another question. So can you list the specific to carpentry related licenses and the differences?
All right, okay. Again, it depends and so on what area of carpentry you're mainly involved in. So there is a overriding DBL for carpentry, which includes and so on such things as the special class for framing. So if you're only doing framing, there's a class of license for that. If you're doing gates and fences, there's a specific license for that. The non-habitable buildings that I've already discussed, which is the likes of decks and pergolas, which is a pretty popular one, there's a separate license for that. There's also a separate license for installing windows and doors. So depending on what area you're focusing in, particularly if you're a younger guy, again, you know, focus on get the license of the DBL as a stepping stone and so on towards justifying what you're doing now, and then preparing you if you want to go on and expand your license into a DBU or what have you. Okay. A full carpentry license, which is a DBLC, Domestic Builder Limited to Carpentry, You can actually build a weatherboard house on stumps. That's how powerful that license is.
It's a surprisingly big license. One thing, we had a guy that got through, he actually got through his interview, got his DBU about a month ago. Really interesting. Again, he brought his 3 jobs to the table, listed a stack of jobs, had a really good, I'd say a fantastic history, but medium range history, enough for a DBU. He had about 4 or 5 years, qualifications, everything. And he had a really tough time in his interview. And the assessor took particular umbrage to this guy because he noticed that every single job was a single story. So he really pushed him on scaffolding. He really pushed him on double story and second story framing and roofing and the like. And just remember, those 3 jobs are really, really pivotal. That's your first impression. So before you even sit in that interview, the assessor is going to spend a good period of time going through your application and understanding the history that's brought you to that point of doing an interview, applying for your license. So those 3 jobs are really pivotal. So if you're I had a client who was going for their DBU and they're a brickie and they just put these really, really, really nice fences that they've done, incredible work. Like it was landscaping and it just wasn't enough for DBU. It wasn't ticking enough boxes. So really those 3 jobs are your show pony jobs. They're going to show off your skill set and put you and be the most impressive to really show what you're capable of. One little note is that those jobs have to be in the last 7 years. So if those jobs finish more than 7 years ago, they cannot be part of the 3 jobs. Got a question here. Colin mentioned a license that's doing for bathroom kitchens.
Absolutely. And so if you run a company or if you specialize in doing bathroom, kitchen and laundry renovations, and that's a lot of people out there, it's a good business, there is a license specifically for that. So again, if it comes back to having a discussion and so on about what's the right license for you, what are your objectives and so on in doing this, everybody wants a DBU. But if you're running a successful, if you're involved in some kitchen, bathrooms and laundries, that's what you want to do, get that license because it opens up the scope for you to be able to legitimize your business, not hide by using other people's licenses or being restricted to only working for builders. It just gives you the potential to work for yourself.
Absolutely. And the other thing is that sometimes if we're not eligible to go for the big license, we can even go for 2 or 3 at the same time. So they're different applications at the same time. But we've got people, you can imagine that if you're not quite ready for the DBU, if you've got the bathroom, kitchen, laundry, you've got your structural landscaping licenses, those 2 licenses are what we call umbrella licenses because they pick up so many other licenses. For example, a bathroom, kitchen, laundry will pick up all your kitchen cabinetry, it'll pick up all your waterproofing, it'll pick up there's about 7 or 8 licenses, isn't it, Nicole, in the bathroom, kitchen, laundry?
Yeah, correct. And so on, and even things if you link licenses together, if you're doing decks and pergolas, it's probably a good thing for you to have landscape gardening as well. If you're doing swimming pools, which is a separate license for, surely with a swimming pool, it'd be great to be able to offer a client, I can do the pool, I can do the deck and surroundings, and I can do the landscape gardening. It doesn't cost you anything really extra and so on to be able to get that. But again, it's kind of fit for purpose, what helps your business, what helps you achieve your objectives and so on the best.
Absolutely. Took the words out of my mouth. I've been doing this too long together. Now, there's a question here, not really for us though, but it's what's the timeline for doing your Cert 4 and diploma respectively?
Okay, this kind of sorts the good guys out from the cheats. And without going into a lot of detail and so on, that if you look at a legitimate course, it's probably going to take you a minimum of 9 months to be able to do each the Cert 4 and then a further 9 months and so on to do the diploma. If you look at some shonky things, and particularly out of Queensland and WA, I've got to say, you can basically buy them off the shelf, but that's going to give you 0 credibility, and in fact, it's going to be worse with the assessors. If you go to a credible provider of those courses, it may take a little longer, but you are going to get the training that you required.
Okay, Hank. So Irvin, who's actually the qualified trainer at Box Hill, has said that we deliver the Cert 4 in 1 year and the diploma in about 2 years, which really fits the mold. Like that's exactly what the VBA is looking for. They're going to want to see that on your resume, you know, that you did it for those times. The other thing, Victor, is I just like when Colin's answering that question, he's not looking at you face to face right now. We're doing it on a webinar. If he's answering a 20-year-old versus a 34-year-old, we sort of stagger our conversation slightly different. So to a 20-year-old, we're heavily pushing that education side. Tick every box. You're not quite ready for registration yet. Before a 33, 34-year-old, would probably want to have a one-on-one with you and just understand a little bit more about your history. The education is really important. Do it with a proper provider, but let's understand your history a little bit more, how far along the line you've come and how we can possibly assist you. But considering you're on this webinar specifically from Box Hill, you're obviously taking the right step to begin with, but we'll probably have a conversation offline with how we can tailor something for you and look at getting that result. But thank you, Irvin, for dropping in that answer, mate. Really appreciate it. Okay. Okay. The Cert 4 becomes, this is the question, the Cert 4 becomes the first year of the diploma effectively, which I'm assuming is a comment regarding the way that Box Hill works. So they do 1 year of the Cert 4, and then you do the following year would be the 2 years, which I'm assuming. If Irvin, if you could confirm that, please, that would be fantastic. Just so the guys know whether it's a 1 or a 2 or a 3-year journey, just to punch out both qualifications. That'd be fantastic, mate. Colin, did you want to talk? One thing that I've heard a lot recently is we're getting record number of declines regarding the application. Did you want to start firstly with the application itself and then talk about the significant change that's happened over the last 6 months?
Sure. The application, as I mentioned before, is quite a detailed document. By the time it's finished and you put your work history in there, it will be about yay thick and so on, and between 200 and 300 pages. It's quite specific and detailed in a lot of the requirements that they have. So it's certainly and so on demands that you are very careful in putting the application together and just make sure that you get checked over by somebody who knows the application, because since and post-COVID, the VBA are still very much in a backlog situation. They are being choked at the moment and so on. A lot of their staff are still working from home. We're not really sure and so on how they're processing the applications, whether it's last in, first out or what have you. So to give yourself the best chance of going through it quickly, just make sure the application is perfect. What happens is that the application is lodged, received ultimately by the VBA. It goes through a desk audit, and that involves and so on a clerical person just making sure that everything that should be in the application is in the application. And we've had a situation now where there's so much under the pump that they've rejected an entire application because one page and so on that was missing and so on a document. Where they used to ask for just request for further information, they're now pushing it back again. So we've found that quite amazing and so on how many just what you'd think would be just trivial things, which ordinarily and so on you can just rectify and so on over the phone, they're pushing back. And that's just a reflection and so on the workload and how much under the pump they are.
Yeah, it's been probably quite shocking really the last 6 months about how many simple things VBA is pushing. Like we've found that it's just really pedantic on that side. One thing is that when you're looking at a training provider, I always say you can train forever and you will never get registered. It is the application that starts the process. So when you get your application into the VBA, now there are significant delays. So we used to get people to train with us, finish their Cert 4 deployment, get ready, come into our training, which is a 14-week system, get maybe halfway to 3/4 through and lodge your application. Now we're lodging the application at the very start of training because it's so long in between getting a response from the VBA. There's been a couple of questions here, Cole. I'll just scroll back. Okay. Okay. Are there any government-funded positions for Cert 4 or diploma, or are they all full fee paying?
No, I understand that things have changed, so Irving might be able to throw a bit more light on that, but certainly what used to be the case is that if you do not have a current qualification higher than a Cert 4 or higher than a diploma, there's government funding which is available to you. So what that means and so on is if you go through and you get your Cert 3 as being a carpenter or a bricklayer, then you can move on and do the Cert 4, which is fully government funded. You then complete the Cert 4 and then you can go on and you can do the diploma as being fully funded. It used to be the case that if you had a diploma in traffic school management and that you weren't able to get the funding because the government had already provided you with funding. But I understand that that's changed. But again, your TAFE would be the best one to talk to that about.
Actually, this is a good question, because Victor's next question, because I wasn't thinking of that, Cole, but I know we only learned that recently. Victor says, would a previous bachelor degree in management obtained prior to becoming a carpenter affect the process, or is the full cert for etc. still required? For that, Victor, we'd really probably want to have a sit down chat to you, buddy. It sounds like you've done something different. You haven't done the stereotypical either drop out at 16 or go from 18 to a carpentry apprenticeship. You've done a bit of a different pathway. So I probably want to do a one-on-one with you, buddy, and just sit down and get a bit of an understanding for what your background is. You're 33 at the moment. You've obviously had considerable history behind you, and just tailor something for you. I think that would probably be the right approach, Cole.
Yeah, I'd totally endorse that. To have a conversation with somebody who's going to set you on the right path and so on is not going to cost you money, and it's not going to imply things and so on that you should do. It's there to provide a pathway. Of all the inquiries that we can't accept, or we knock them back, if you like, and so we just don't say, no, your situation's hopeless if they are the bus driver or the bank manager. We then turn around and so on and say to them, this is the pathway. You need 3 years full-time. You need the 3 jobs. You need the reference. Please, once you do that and so on, then we'll be able to talk more. But if we were to take them on as being a client, if they were to apply by themselves, it's just going to end in disaster.
Irving has confirmed that Box Hill confirmed what you said, Cole, and that even if you've got a higher qualification, they're still eligible for the funding. So that's
great, and I think that's just brand new news that's come through in the last week or so. So thanks, Irving, for clarifying that.
Yeah, very, very. It's actually really good news, really good, especially for people that are restarting their careers.
Yeah, correct. If they've changed pathways and so on, yeah, absolutely.
Because now, just for changing pathways, you're actually getting penalised, when now you've got the same benefit as someone new to the industry. Here's a really good question from Craig Johnson. This is right in our hitting zone. We talk about builder registration. What is the best way to start gathering evidence for a DEL?
From the jobs that you work on. Take photographs and so on of the jobs that you're on. If you can get as much detail as you can as to whether it be working drawings, if you can get any engineering, that's great. If the people that you're working with and so on are willing to provide you with a contract, that's a real bonus, but you know what, the chances are it won't happen. If I use the example of a carpenter for a volume builder, he is never going to see a contract. He is never going to see and so on the preliminaries that go in before the build starts. And that's okay, because that's accepted and so on. You don't have the exposure to that. But if you can gather as much information as you can and put it in the application, and then that demonstrates to the VBA that you've had the experience. But if you haven't, you've got to be able to demonstrate the knowledge. And I guess that's where people like us come in, that we can help and so on through our training and so on, that pad out that knowledge that's required.
One thing I always encourage, because I've met some people that they're talking about their projects and they're so proud of their projects. They grab their phone and they've got selfies in the photos. They're scrolling through photos of every single stage. You don't need that much detail. And then people stress, oh man, I didn't take photos of the job. You can still use it. So very, very simply, if it's going to be part of your hero job, you want plans. It's actually the 3 Ps. I didn't realize this recently, Colin. Plans, permit, photos. But with photos, you only need a handful. Could be just 3 to 5 photos, just basic, just to tell the story. That's it. It's just so that the assessor can get a bit of an image of what that job was. You don't need to be in the photo. And obviously, you want to make sure there's no OH&S or any silly things, going on in the photos. You want to make them nice and professional and a clean site, but don't bring a photo album. They will we won't put a photo album in. They don't want to see that. They just want to see a bit of touch and feel for that. Peter mentioned that if there is any questions about the Cert 4 and diploma, they can email Irving, who is the diploma teacher, Craig Johnson, who is the timber trades manager, or Peter himself. Again, we're answering the questions about the registration process. When it comes to the absolute experts, when it comes to the qualifications themselves, the best thing is to speak to Box Hill themselves. They are the experts. They're really well renowned. They're well regarded by the VBA. They know, we go to them for advice. We do the registration process. So you always have trade, Cert 3, Cert 4 diploma, and then there's end part here is Rego. And that's our absolute hitting zones. That's what we specialize in. And that's hence why probably Irvin knew about that change before we did, about the change when you change your career that you get the funding. So I highly recommend speaking to them. Definitely, we're happy to chat to anyone here and talk to you about the registration process. But for those nitty gritty details, when you talk about core modules and stuff, I'd highly recommend speaking to Boxy directly. Now, a couple of more questions. I've always told all our trades, so it's a half Irvin and half me here, Cole. I've always told all our trade students to, oh no, sorry, collect copies of building permits, working drawings, certificate of completion, things that, as Colin said, very unlikely for most people to get a copy of the contract. Yeah, that's exactly right, Irvin. Exactly right. It's really good advice. Colin mentioned you go through a 14-week process with you guys to prep for the debut interview. What does that look like?
Quite frankly, and so on, because there's been a huge variation in the quality of Cert 4 and diplomas and so on, which are being delivered, we go back and we train people and so on what to prepare for the VBA assessments. So we will go through and we'll spend a lot of time on the likes of contracts. We have 14 separate modules over those 14 weeks, and it's one night per week for normally between 6 and 9, which we deliver via Zoom if it's convenient. We deliver them so in a classroom, which I prefer. If you need to via Zoom, I don't really recommend, unless you've got a quiet place at home, such as a study. Trying to do it off the kitchen table is not going to work. But it's a fairly dedicated, highly focused, highly developed training program to prepare you in what we call the core aspects and so on of the presentation. And it will take you right up to the interview stage. Okay. One of the things that we're very proud of is that, as I said to you before, and so on, we turn away a lot of people and so on because they just don't have the criteria. If people come with us and so on, and we see a way of working together that they do fit, we'll work with you and so on until such time as you are registered. There's no government funding from our side, so you're paying a fee. As I mentioned before, we'll tell you what you need to know, not what you want to hear, which sometimes can be difficult. But our whole job and our whole reputation depends on getting you through, to the extent whereby when you go to the interview, if you're not really nervous and so on, you're not human, okay? And sometimes we've all had situations where we block out and we don't get it. So irrespective of how well we think we may have prepared you, some people on site actually don't make it. So if that's the case, you come back to us, we readjust, resubmit and so on your application, fine tune, have a look at and so on what areas on the training need to be done, and we do that at no charge.
It's really interesting because like the Cert 4 and diploma are really good qualifications. Diploma tends to be a very, probably 80% above, focused on commercial rather than domestic. The Cert 4 is really locked into the domestic side. When we come to our class, a really key difference is it's so heavily focused on the interview. For example, we had the pleasure of jumping into a Cert 3 class courtesy of Peter, and first thing we know is everyone's on their laptops. There's not one book to be found, which is absolutely the right way to go. Absolutely fantastic for the real world. We do Rego World, and Rego World and real world are very, very different. For example, there are no electronics allowed in the interview. So you're going to be taking a pile of books. Imagine a pile of books that go from the ground to your knee high. Now, Cole, if you can just turn that sideways so you can see the left. But you will never, ever, ever see a book as well tabbed up as anything that comes from us preparing for a builder registration course. Now, when you go in the real world, you've got Google, you've got ChatGPT, you've got every other resource, you've got mentors, you've got architects, you've got engineers, you've got surveyors, you've got so many resources available. But when you sit that interview, it is just you and your book. That's it. So it is really, really important that in Rego World, not real world, but Rego World, you have your book. Imagine a pile of books that go from the ground to your knee high. That is how many, it's 20 books. That's how many books you're going to be taking into your interview. So when Victor talks about what do you do in the 14 weeks, we are highlighting and tabbing those books so that whatever the VBA asks you, you can answer the question and then reference your answer. I hope that makes sense. So that is the significant difference between the Cert 3, Cert 4 diploma and then registration. That's why it's in that order. You're going to learn just as much from Box Hill TAFE. They're a fantastic institute. But what we're doing here is locking in on that one interview that's going to set up the rest of your life. So That is specifically what the builder registration course is. Sorry,
Yeah.
Colin.
May I say, Nathan, so on that nobody can know and quote and so on every reg, every act and so on, every requirement and so on regarding builders. When you go in for your interview, you're expected not to perhaps know anything because it is an open book interview, but you are expected and so on to know where to find it. And that's the beauty and so on of the tabbing system and the books. As Nathan said, it's regrettable the VBA are coming kicking and screaming into the 1980s. Hopefully and so on that they'll allow some electronic access and so on that in the future, but at the moment they don't. And to be quite frank and so on that by the time that our clients go into the interview, their books are well warm, they know and so on where to access things, and the VBA assessors see that they've come in with our tabs and they basically and so on, that adds to the credibility.
We've got a very good relation with the VBA. Even when you sit your interview, you generally give us a call and say, hey, I've got David, I've got Mario, I've got Craig, I've got, one of the guys. You let us know, and then we generally give you some feedback on the person, what football team they go for, what their hobbies are, what they used to do for a living, that sort of thing. Just not that it gives you an advantage, but it just gives you that breath of confidence that it's actually a real person on the other end. And just to take away that sort of fear as much as we can. You will still have the fear, but if we can give you that little bit of comfortability, and then, we often have successful students come back to our class and just do a quick chat on, how they found their experience and the questions they got asked. So all that sort of intel is really, really beneficial when you get to that point in your registration journey.
As Nate said, we have a good reputation. It's a good relationship with the VBA. In fact, their former team leader, the head of all the assessors and so on, that has left the VBA and he's joined us. So he's one of our team members and so on, that who we get to talk to the guys during one of the 14 weeks, just in terms of how to prepare for the VBA, what the assessors are looking for, how to present yourself, and just give you some inside running.
Now we'll just finish up all the questions now. I've got a couple of questions about fee structures before we'll answer, of course. I'm just gonna just list my phone number on the list now. I'm actually on annual leave this week with school holidays with my kids. I don't know if you can hear them screaming in the background. It's definitely almost bedtime for them. But if anyone is interested in having a conversation, you can always look up builder registration, leave an inquiry on the website, or if Victor or any of the other guys would like, just shoot me a text with your name, and then I'll pass that on to one of our guys. They can reach out to you, make contact, and just have that conversation. They'll let you know that you come from Box Hill as well, just so they know where you're from and that you're associated with them. And yeah, feel free to text that through. Now, in regards to the fee structure, Colin, do you want to discuss that one?
Yeah, sure. And so that we provide a comprehensive service. So the most important thing is to get your application going first, because you can do all the training you like, but if you don't put the application in and so on, you're going to forget and going to be dead in the water. So our fee structure is 6,995, so just a shade under 7,000, which includes a dedicated person to do the application for you. We have a team of CSOs, of which one person will be just dedicated and so on to do our client's app. So you've got the one.
What does CSO mean?
Oh, that's my three-letter acronym. Okay, that's the customer service officer, as you well know, Nathan, so on that, which we've got a team of these highly capable team members and so on that who are dedicated to putting the application together. And they will be the person's one point of contact through the whole app. And once we get together and so on, we break the back of that application, that CSO, she will move on and so on, complete your application and get the other little details that's required, whilst you can then focus on the training. So our ideal situation is that we submit the application well and truly before you've completed the training, which then shortens that lead time and so on between the training and then that horrible wait and so on for the interview.
The sales pitch with us has always been, we have a really high success rate passing on the first attempt. And specifically, if you do not pass on the first attempt and we have approved you, so you've gone through our checklist to make sure, yes, you are eligible for this license. Then we've lodged your application, so you're proven that you're eligible based on what you've said. So everything you've said you've been able to back up, we can guarantee that you will get the positive result. And if you do not pass on the first attempt, you will stay with us until you pass for no extra charge. In the 10 years and 2,000 licenses of doing this, I can tell you that we've never ever had anyone fail 3 times. We have had 2 people fail twice, both of them, English wasn't their first language, and to be honest, I think one of them we shouldn't have taken on because the history wasn't quite there. But we are very, very meticulous, and we don't apologise if we turn you down, but we do understand that we will always give you a pathway. So please understand that we will only take you on if we honestly believe and know that you are going to walk out with your builder's license. Because there is a, this is a results orientated business. So while we like to build a good relationship and look after you and want to have a positive experience, the key thing is you want to be coming out not just a better builder, but with your license physically in your hand.
Yeah, our reputation relies on it.
Yeah. I think our reputation does speak for itself. But Mark Love just asked, sorry, just to step back, but did you say the Cert for deployment are government funded, or is it just a diploma?
Both can be funded, most certainly. And from what Irving was saying before, I think they're relaxed a little bit. The best thing to do and so on would be to have a chat and so on, that to Irving, have a chat and so on to the people from Box Hill, and I'm sure you'll find that both of them are funded.
Mark, it could be that I'm making an assumption here. You might have spoke to them last year where you may have had a Cert 4 to your name already. And with those relaxed laws now, it's so much more open. So Box Hill can now offer that Cert 4 to so many more people, where this time last year, they wouldn't have had that option. So I would highly recommend reaching out to, I think it's Irvin, and just have that conversation with him. Yeah, I'm sure that they'll be able to assist you. Yes, Irvin, can you text me your detail or put your details in the message or in the group? The guys would like to have your details if possible. And if you could do that, buddy. Yeah, again, today's all about, is Irvin's phone number fantastic. Today's all about getting rid of the muddy waters, trying to specifically answer as many questions as we can about the DBU process, about the commercial process, getting a license, what a carpentry license is versus a DBU. Hopefully we're the company that can help you out. But again, if we're not if you're not ready for registration, or you just need that advice or guidance, it doesn't mean you have to use us, because all the advice is for free, the catch up is for free, and more importantly, your pathway is for free. Now, you may choose to engage in our service, which we hope you do, but you may not require our service. So everyone's quite different, and that's why we really want to tailor it for you. So we would never, ever do a sign up or look to charge anyone over a medium like this. We would always give you the information, do the phone call, send you information, then do a catch up and really make sure, yes, we can help you before bringing you on board. And unfortunately, we do have to decline 8 out of 10 people that we speak to, but it's about looking after the top echelon and looking after the people that are going to get registered. And sometimes it's about setting you up so that you can become part of that elite so that we can bring you on board. So I hope that makes sense. I've got here my emails. Okay, so in the email that you guys received with the links to the webinar, Peter had all his details in there, so it should be very, very easy to locate. Yeah, we're going to be wrapping up in the next sort of 5 to 6 minutes now. Is there any other questions? Or Colin, do you want to, I'm sure we'll get a few more questions while we're going to. Is there anything you want to clarify on or close out with, or anything you wanted to finish with?
No, I think you've covered most of the bases there, Nathan. So on that, to become a registered builder, it's not like a sausage machine. Everybody has their own journey. Everybody's got a slightly different pathway, and everybody has the right to be respected and so on, to hear what their ambitions are, what their pathway is, and what their condition, or what their things that surround and so on their application as well. Okay. There's the basic structure, which I think we've outlined and so on today. I'd encourage you all and so on to, again, do the certificate do the diploma and so on to strengthen the application. Box Hill and the other TAFEs and so on are a quality medium to be able to do it. I again advise you to be careful and so on of dodgy RTOs. If anything looks too good to be true, it normally is. And we'd be love to have chats with you and so on, and be able to provide that pathway. Okay. Again, I've said it a few times today, but we pride ourselves in saying and advising what you need to know, not necessarily what you want to hear.
Fantastic. Well, I'd like to thank everyone. Okay, so Peter just wanted to close out saying we'll have another webinar in the next few weeks with more information about the Cert 4 and diploma, whether that's from us or Box Hill. Peter did do an amazing job and communicate that through to you guys. We're just here to introduce ourselves, see if we can answer any questions, provide as much education on the area that we specialize in. Again, you've got Cert 3, Cert 4, diploma, and then registration. And you've got a quality company like Box Hill, TAFE that you're working with. Please utilize them on those first 3 stages. We're the experts and specialists at that final stage. Otherwise, we fully endorse Box Hill Institute. They've done a fantastic job. They do an amazing job. And thank you so much for them for allowing us to present to you guys today. Again, we're going to close out there, guys. We are contactable, builder registration. Thank you to Peter Griffiths. And also thank you to Irving. I haven't met Irving before, but thank you so much for your contribution, buddy. That was really beneficial. Before we close out, Craig was saying thank you. That's great. Yeah, that's it from us. So my name's Nathan Hawkins. I'm from Builder Registration. We've got Colin Brewer, the Managing Director of Builder Registration, who's been in doing this for over 10 years. So got a really solid background. I hope you've enjoyed and hope we've answered everything we can today. Again, we're very, very contactable, easy to reach, except for me this week because I've got school holidays, but I'm sure you can annoy Colin. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you can help you in the future, please let us know, and I'm sure Peter will be in contact about the next webinar. Thanks, guys.
Guys, Nathan, thank you very much. Cheers.